Hello and good evening, everyone. Dobry wieczór, Erev Tov. Today we are going to host, we are Negev web developers, me and Yanai are organizing meetups in the southern part of Israel called Negev. Today we are hosting a CSS architect, Elad Schechter. He will take us to a journey on how he created a COVID-19 game. Hi, Elad.
Hi.
It's already like the seventh time we host you here?
At least 7 times, I think. But what is more interesting that the first time that I've been hosted, it was in your meetup. My first meetup in my life, it was in the Negev Web Developers. I think something like almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's amazing, and you did so many meetups and connected with so many people. It's great to see it. So, with no further ado, let's start with your lecture. I don't want to take the time from your great lecture. So here it goes. Enjoy.
You sure that you want to start, not giving 5 minutes until a lot of people will join us?
Okay, let's drink some beer to you, Elad.
I don't have a beer, but I have my soda here.
Yeah, great.
I will drink after.
It's great to see some familiar faces from the community in our chat and joining our meetups despite the COVID-19 pandemic. It's really great to see you guys.
All this talk I created because the COVID-19. It's done only because the COVID-19. all the difficult that the COVID-19 create me this talk and what we are going to talk about here today. What more?
Oh, it's amazing.
From what country? Maybe we'll ask what participate we have from around the world. If there is someone that is not from Israel, you are maybe can write to us in the messages of Facebook, in the chat of Facebook.
The chat of YouTube. We are on YouTube
yes,
today.
Yes, sorry. Yes, sorry. Okay. Tell me when we want to start and we will start.
Yeah, so Igor here suggesting that we always need to do YouTube Live and not just at the COVID-19. So I think that the most added value of meetups is meeting people in real life and not just like the content itself. So I think that that it's also beneficial not to have a live stream. So Elad, you asked if someone here is not from Israel, and Live FPS saying he's from Petah Tikva.
I'm from Ashkelon. I don't know if it's called Israel too.
Well, it depends who you ask, I guess.
And Yana is from Yerucham. I don't know where it is in the map.
Well, we are Negev web developers. I'm now streaming to you from Ofakim. So yeah. So I think let's start.
Let's start it. Yes.
Elad, it's the stage is yours.
Okay, I will share my screen, and we will start. Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Elad. I'm a CSS HTML architect and code evangelist at Animap. Besides this, I'm writing lots of articles on CSS that you can find in this link at medium.com, and I'm community leader at CSS class on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I love to talk about CSS in every meetup and every conference. And we are here in this webinar, of course, because the coronavirus pandemic. The coronavirus pandemic has disrupted our life in so many ways. Even for me, I needed to talk in two big conferences in Europe, one in Novosibirsk in Russia and the second one in Vilnius in Lithuania. And of course, all the conferences in the world was canceled. And in this specific situation in life, we can be maybe sad. But in my point in real life, I don't want to be sad because life is very, very short. And if it's so short, we don't have time to be sad. We always need to try how to gain something from this sad situation. And this is exactly what I've done. In the beginning of the coronavirus time, we stay at home. And the first thing that I needed to do, because we are now have a lot of time home, and in the regular life, we don't have time at home. And it was the best situation maybe to organize again my apartment and my living room that I now will be for in it a lot of time. I arrange everything again and change, and I open my sofa to a bed that you can sometimes will stay only in my living room. And the aquarium that didn't work for 5 years, I put it on it waters and some fishes, that it will gain me a better, that I will feel a lot better to stay at home. And then came the first weekend in this coronavirus pandemic. And of course, we cannot go anywhere. And this Friday and Saturday, I thought to myself, what I will do with my free time that I have now at home. And I remember that 7 years ago, I created a pure CSS game that was very successful. A lot of developers around the world very loved it. And it's called Kill the Birds game, if you will search it at Google. And I thought to myself that I create a lot better game because in the last 7 years, I learned so many tricks in CSS. And this is exactly what I've done. I said this weekend and created a new pure CSS game. And on what I will create it, we are now in the coronavirus pandemics. Why not create a coronavirus game? And this is exactly what I've done. I created the Corona game and I called it the Coronavirus Invaders. And everything that you see here is done with pure CSS and HTML. Yes, I'm using preprocessor of SAS for CSS and even a preprocessor for the HTML that it's called PAG. But there isn't any line of JavaScript in the code, anything with no JavaScript. It means that when I will click the OMI button, it will open a pop-up. And this logic without any JavaScript. If I press the X or the close button, it will close the pop-up. Nothing with JavaScript. And when I will press the Save the World button, that it's the play button of the game, it will hide the main navigation and open the game. And even this logic without any JavaScript. And when I will click this coronavirus creature, as you see, they are being dead while the cursor is a soap that killed them. And it's counting all the coronavirus. Again, nothing with JavaScript, nothing. All this logic, all the animation, everything with pure CSS, even the countdown that you see here is with pure CSS. Now, the first thing before you even start to create a project, you need to think about something that it will inspire you. And this is exactly what I've done. I thought to myself, how I will create a creature, how they look. And I remember an old code pen that was painting on canvas, and the small creature remember me the coronavirus creatures. I don't know why I remember it, and I succeeded to find this in Google. And this was my starting point of how maybe to create the coronavirus creatures. And because I'm not playing so many games in the last years, I remember an old game that called Chicken Invaders. And I gave the name of my game the Coronavirus Invaders only because I remember this game and invaders sound for me cute. And because I'm not a designer, I need to design the main navigation. I use some ideas of the main navigation that we have in the Chicken Invaders game. And inspiration is not to copy the things that we see, and it's not to look on anything, because if you need inspiration, everything in the world is built on other things that we have in the world. But inspiration is to taking ideas and take only small stuff on them and create from them something else. And this is exactly what I have done. The first thing that I done in my project was creating the coronavirus creatures. And the nice thing to see that this was my inspiration, but in the end, it's changed to something very different from my inspiration. And this is a good thing because I didn't want to copy. I want to create it something from on my own. And the only thing that I used in the end is the eyes, how to create the eyes, and they are very, very similar. But everything else is very different. And when I creating the HTML of those creature, I always think on HTML like an object-oriented. This is a coronavirus. I need to understand the part when I'm reading the HTML, and everything in the HTML got a lot of thinking. The coronavirus label, it's a label, and it's one of the tricks, but we will talk about the tricks later. And the input insight is again something of the trick that we will see later. But the body of the coronavirus, here all the painting is started. The body is all the circle thing, and we have all the errors of the coronavirus and the eye elements. Everything structured that when we will see the code, we will understand what we are looking at. And because all this repetition of a lot of HTML, and because in the game we have 100 viruses, I don't want to copy paste my HTML a lot of time. And this is my first time that I'm using the Pug HTML preprocessor. Why is that? Because in Pug HTML preprocessor, we can do some repeat that will create this without the need that we will copy paste again and again all the HTML. How I'm doing it? And besides, it's very important to tell that I'm using, of course, South preprocessor for the CSS. And how I'm doing it? All this HTML that is repeating, I'm now doing it with a Pug. I can do some HTML loops to write all this HTML. I'm using here the while loop that count from 1 until 12 and repeating all this span 12 times. And every time it's bringing the number 1 up in every circle of the loop. To write Pug preprocessor, it isn't so easy. You need to get used to it. You cannot write some of the HTML in HTML and the other stuff in Pug. When you're working with Pug, you have to write all the Pug HTML in the way that Pug is written. And you need to get used to it. This is my first project in life that I'm using the Pug HTML preprocessor. On all this HTML, after creating it Pug, it's look like this, and all the HTML that I'm done in this project is written with Pug. The second thing is I started to create the creature, to create the style of the creature. First, on the body of the coronavirus, I gave it position relative. This way, all the parts will be according to the body. Display block, it's only because this is a span element. Width and height of 100 pixel, and now I want it to be circle. I give it a border radius of 50% and background color with a black color. This way I created the body of the coronavirus. And I'm using here the attribute selector that select the both class of I1 and I2 together, and position them absolute from top 25%, width and height little bit different, with a border radius of 50% and background color white. Why it's different? It's giving the eyes a shape of an egg, and more cute way to create the eyes. Every eyes I position it the first eye from the left and the second eye from the right, and rotate Z with transform that all the inner eyes will go a little bit inside this way. And to create the inner part of the eyes, I'm using here the before pseudo element and creating again the small circle inside the eyes with height pixel, background color black, border ratio 50%. Everything small HTML element, background color, and border radius of 50%. Almost everything here is in the same idea. But then I wanted to create the hairs, and in the hairs, I needed to create it more precise. Every hair is created from 2 boxes. I'm using for every hair the pseudo element of before and the pseudo element of the after. The root of the hair is a square that's going like this, and the crown of the hair, it's another square. How it's getting circle? Again, border radius of 50%. But to create it more precise, to put all the hairs around the body of the coronavirus creature, I position them, all the hairs, in the center of the coronavirus creature. And then I need to put them all around the coronavirus creature. Every air getting different transform. The first air, for example, rotate Z of 0 degrees and translate Y of minus 65 pixel. This way it's going here to the top. But how I'm putting the next hair here and here and here, I'm changing the rotate Z for every hair in 30 degree. The second hair will be in 30 degree and translate Y of minus 65 pixel. Because the rotate Z is first, it's first doing the rotate Z and then doing the translate Y. And the translate Y, it's now doesn't go up, it's going up a little bit right. And again, I'm doing all this air. When you are working with transform, the order of the value is important. If you will write it in the opposite way, it won't work good for you. And this is exactly what I've done. This way I created all the coronavirus hair, 30 degrees, 60, 90, and you understand the idea. But what I'm seeing here in my code, I'm repeating a lot of code in CSS, and we as a web developers don't like to repeat our code. How can we solve it? If in the HTML preprocessor we use some loops, why not to use some loops in the Sass preprocessor? We have the for loop of Sass preprocessor. And I created a start variable of start position with 0 degrees. Every hair getting with the for loop a dynamic class. The first is air1, second air2, and again, you understand the idea. The start position is changing in every loop, getting the start position and adding it 30 degrees. This way, every transform getting different rotate Z degrees, 30, 60, 90, and you understand the idea. This creating us this, just with a more calculate CSS. And I wanted that this creature will be more alive, and then I wanted to add the animation to the hairs of the coronavirus. And every air need to get different animation. Why is that? Because in every air, the rotate Z is different. As I just created a keyframe dynamic for every air, I just put it in the same loop of every air that is being created. But I wanted that every air will move in a different time. Then I use the animation delay. But if I will give it animation delay for every air that is positive, the animation will stuck and only that will start to move. How I can telling the animation that will start to move different in every air, and that with all the animation will be moving when the web page is refreshed, I'm using a negative animation delay. This means that the first error is a minus 60 milliseconds, the second error is a minus 110 milliseconds, and it means that when I refresh in the page, the animation, when it starts loading, it's behave like it started in the past, even before the page is loaded. And this is a small trick, nice trick to do animation with negative delays. And I wanted that it would be more alive, and I done 2 animations for the eyes, one for the inner of the eyes, and the second animation I'm using here, the after pseudo element of the eyes, that it's a box with a width of 100% and a height of 0 pixel. And every 5 seconds, in the last half second, the closed eye is getting height of 100%. This way, the height is getting closed every 4.5 seconds. A nice trick to create with CSS animation. But let's get to the more interesting interesting things in the game. How to create the game, how to understand how really the game is working. Let's understand the game frames. Let's see this game again and understand what frame that we have in our game. The first frame that we see in the game is the main navigation frame. Here we have the menu navigation of the game. The second frame, that if I will click this, I have here a pop-up, the OMI pop-up. The third frame, it will be the how to play pop-up. The fourth frame is when I will press the save the world button. The main navigation will disappear, and instead of it, we will see the game frame itself. That's it. This is the fourth frame that we have in the game. How we are doing it in our HTML part, we're creating 4 frames. The first frame is the game menu frame that we saw in the beginning. If we will press the start of the game, we will see the game frame, and this frame will disappear. If we will click the how to play button, it will open the how to play pop-up. If we will click the who am I button, it will open the who am I pop-up. This is the 4 frame that we have in this game. And how I'm creating this that it will work, how I'm doing this CSS trick that every press of the button doing something else. I'm first things that I'm doing, I'm hiding all the frames that I don't want to see. It means that the how to play pop-up, the who am I pop-up, and the main frame of the game are display none, and only the main navigation we see it with the display block. Now I want to create the logic for the game. And I need some flags in the HTML that will tell me if something is open or not open. I'm using here some input from type of checkbox. This way I can know if it's true or false every one of the things in the game. It's meaning that this input of toggle games, if it's false, I see the main navigation. If it's true, I want to see the game frame. The autoplay pop-up, if it's false, I don't see the pop-up. If it's true, if it's checked, I want to see the autoplay pop-up. For the who am I pop-up, same idea. If it's false, I don't see him. And if it's checked, I want to see the who am I pop-up. But how I'm triggering this checkbox in the game? And this is the first trick to do it. The button that you saw in the game are not buttons. They're not HTML buttons. They are label buttons. They are not buttons. They are labels. And with labels, you can do some of tricks that triggering some inputs. It's mean that the toggle game, the save the world button that is with the attribute of toggle game is triggering this idea of this input. It means that when I will click this checkbox will be checked or unchecked if I will click it. Again, the same for how to play and the who am I. If I click the autoplay, it will check this button, and if I click it again, it will uncheck the checkbox. But still, this isn't creating any hiding or showing other elements. It's only check and uncheck those inputs. But how from this check or uncheck inputs, I can create to show or hide other frames. And here comes the sibling selector trick. I can do in CSS a selector that if it's getting check, it will go to a sibling element, any sibling element, and to display block or display none. It means that I can show or hide other frames of the games according to those checkbox. And this is exactly what I'm doing. The who am I pop-up, if it's check, it going to the sibling element of who am I and tell him display block. And again, the same for the autoplay pop-up. If you are check, going to the sibling element of autoplay and put it in display block. This way, this pop-up, if they are clicked, the button are clicked, they're showing the HTML pop-ups. But how I'm closing those pop-up? Here in the game, this X and the close buttons are the same. There are another labels that triggering the same checkbox. This way, I can trigger the same checkbox and tell him to be unchecked. This is when I click it, it will uncheck the input in the beginning of the HTML. But wait a minute. When I'm pressing the save the world, two things happen. One thing is to hide the main navigation, and second thing is to show the game itself. How I'm doing it? It's two operations. I'm doing it with two operations. I'm telling that if the toggle game checkbox is checked, go to the game menu frame and display it none, and go to the game frame and display it block. This written, of course, with the SAS preprocessor, but of course you can write it with tools, separated lines of CSS. It's only more easy to read in this way. And this is the trick how to show or hide frames in the game. But let's talk about one of the nicest tricks that we have in pure CSS game. When I'm clicking those coronavirus, the dead viruses are being counting. I'm doing it while I'm using the CSS counters that we have in CSS very long time ago. before we will talk about the CSS counter, let's talk about the logic of the viruses. Every virus is created from an HTML label that with the class of coronavirus, and inside of it, you have input type radio. All the styles of the coronavirus are in the body HTML element. This, the label, it's only the position of the coronavirus while it's moving in the game. But the small magic that we have in label, that if we will put inside them input, when I will click any place in the label, it will trigger the input that is inside of this element. And why I'm using here input type of radio and not checkbox? Because input type radio can be checked only one time, and it's good. Because when it's checked, it means that the virus is dead, and I don't want it that I can do it unchecked and it will be dead, and 1 second it will be alive. This way, when the input is checked, it means that the virus is dead. But now I need to count all those viruses. How I'm doing it? I need to create a CSS counter, and it needs to be before all the input in the game. I'm putting it on the body counter reset, creating for us a CSS counter. I give it a name of the corona name, and now I need to know how many input of type of radio in the games are being checked. I'm creating another selector input type radio. If you are checked, counter increment the coronavirus. This means that every corona that is checked, this selector will count it. And now I need to print it on the screen. And this summarize div element with the class of sum, I will print the score with the CSS property of content, with the pseudo element of after. And the pseudo, the property of the content property can get the counter function, and here it can get the value that we increment here and created here. And this way, all the checked input radio buttons, it will print them to the screen. And this was a little bit more complicated. Because of that, let's see a live example for that. Here we can see all the labels, 5 labels of viruses in the game. In the real world, all the eyes, the ears are inside of it, okay? I created here the body counter reset before all the viruses in the game. And I have a summarize here in the end. And when I will click the label, it will trigger the input radio. In the game, I'm putting this input radio with opacity of 0 because that we don't see it. And when this input radio is checked, I'm first doing a counter increment of coronavirus. This will create that the increment will go up when its input type radio is checked. And I'm hiding all the style of this corona creature. Body with opacity of 0, and in the body we have all the part of the virus. And to summarize all the score, pseudo element after content with a counter function, and I'm putting here the corona value that we increment here and created here. And when I will click it, no matter which order, you can see that the counting is go up. And this is one of the most important tricks that we have in pure CSS games. Okay, let's continue to the next trick. How I can create a CSS countdown. And this is really crazy trick. Let's see it in a live example. The CSS countdown is created again from the pseudo element before and after. The first number is the before pseudo element, and the second pseudo element is the after. This is the before element, pseudo element, and this is the after pseudo element. I will refresh it, but we have more time to explain it. And we can do animation on content with keyframes. And this means that every one of them is a separate animation that's going between 9 to the 0 number. But how it's work different, this number from this? Because both of them using the same animation. The first number that is going down every 10 seconds is doing the animation of the countdown for 100 seconds and only one time. This means that it will go between 9 to 0 in 100 seconds. Every 10 seconds, it's going one number down. the second animation for the second number, the after pseudo element, getting the same animation, but doing it for 10 seconds and 10 times. Because of that, it's going every number in every second. 9, 8, 7, 6, and 5, and so on and so on. And it's doing it 10 times. And because of that, we see it 10 times in here. And it's getting the illusion that this number is going between 99 to 0. And for it to work well, when it will finish to do all the animation, it have to be with the forward value here. This means that when all the animation will finish, it will stack on the 0 value. Nice trick to create pure CSS countdown. Okay. Let's talk about random values and why we need random values. Because when we have a real pure CSS game, all the position of all the virus that you see here in the game are randomized. All the size of them, the little bit rotate of them, everything here is a random value. How I can do random values in CSS? It's not really on CSS. I'm using here the power of the SAS preprocessor. Because it's very important, I want you to see the code of it. Wait a minute, where it is? Here it is. Every one of the viruses, we have 100 viruses, get a different keyframe. How I'm creating it 100 times, again, with the for loop that we talked in the beginning. And here comes the random function. Here I'm telling every virus in 6 points of the games, a random value of the translate y that will go between 1 to 80 VH of the height of the container. And even the scale, I'm doing it a little bit randomized. Even I'm rotating a little bit right and a little bit to the left. This way, it's looking very special and very unique for every virus. And this is an amazing trick to create randomized value in CSS. That you will believe me that it's real. Let's see a more small example for it. Here is the HTML without any pug preprocessor. As you can see, there is 6 HTML elements here. And in this for loop that I created, I'm printing to the screen a value, a string value that is going between 1 to 80 VH. All these numbers are randomized. If you don't believe me, let's do some changes and see that these values are being changed. I will create a space, and the number is changing. Again, number is changing. Every changing the CSS, the number is changing. And this is a very nice trick to create randomized values in a pure CSS game. Okay. And let's talk about the last trick. How I know when to put the game over curtain that we didn't see because we didn't play 100 seconds in the game. How I know when to put this game curtain of this pure CSS game. And it's very, very easy trick. All the animation is 0.6 seconds, but you have the animation delay. And I can tell it how many animation delay that I want. In this example, I put only 5 seconds that you will see it quite fast. After 5 seconds of the game, it's putting the game over curtain, but you can put it any number you want. And in my real game, I put in here something like 100 seconds. And this is a very nice trick to create the game over curtain. Okay. What is the takeaways from this talk? You can create pure CSS games in real life, but this isn't the takeaways. I think why I'm doing some stuff in my free time is not to create pure CSS game. This isn't the real idea. The main idea is to create something that it isn't so easy for you, and you can learn from it from some new stuff. Because the best way to learn stuff in life is to play. When you are children, the best way to learn new stuff is by playing. And it isn't changing when you're getting adult. You more enjoying to create stuff by playing more that you need to create stuff just for even only for your work. And I think if you will create for yourself any projects that you want, it can be a pure CSS game, it can be a lot of other things, when you will play, you will be a lot better developer, a lot better person, and you will love your job a lot better, and you will enjoy life, because as I told you in the beginning, life is very short, and we need to celebrate it in any way that we want. And if you want to know more and about this, how I created the CSS creature, I have an article on it on Medium, and I have another article on it, how to create a pure CSS game, again in Medium. And before we finish, and I will give you time to ask some questions. If you want to ask me more questions on CSS or on the game, you can ask me in the CSS class community on Facebook and LinkedIn. You, of course, can follow me on Twitter in this account, and can read all my other articles in Medium, and can see all my other talks in my own website. And that's it, my friend. I hope you enjoyed this talk, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you a lot for doing this lecture. You think you will be doing some more CSS games in the future?
What?
You think you will?
If I will do more pure CSS? Maybe, I don't know. You know, the last game I done 7 years ago. I now created another one. I always thinking from my next project is always in my think what I will enjoy to create. Because if you are not enjoying to create a project, you won't create it, because you need to sit in your home in your free time and to create some project for the fun. And if it's not fun, you won't do it. To create a project for yourself, you have to enjoy it. This is the most important thing. I'm not creating it for any other idea. I want to enjoy it. And of course, I love that to see that people enjoy it too. It's very important. I love to see that I getting good feedback because I'm doing something. Yes, we're a person, and we love that people love us and what we are doing. And maybe it's a way to that when we will be dead, it's not nice to say. We created something in the world that will be still be here after us.
Yeah, I think like everyone, a lot of people who go to learn computer science are doing it to create video games. Like it's the ultimate goal.
I think it's a good reason to learn it, because I think to succeed in our work, in our life, we need to enjoy our job. And I think I started to learn it in the first time to learn the web developer, only to create my first thinking was to creating my own website. I didn't think or thought that I will have chance to work on it. You know, when you begin, you don't have, you always think that to be in this job, you have to have a lot of experience, and you're thinking this idea. And it was 15 years ago, and I didn't thought that I will work on it. I only learned it to enjoy and have fun. And maybe because of that, I'm succeeding. And maybe because I'm only, if people know me more, I'm an HTML CSS architect. And I love CSS. I don't love JavaScript too much. And I'm doing most of the time only CSS and HTML. And I'm succeeding in my job only because I love my job. I really love to do CSS and HTML.
Interesting. You chose for this project to work with SAS. Any particular reason why you did this? Why you chose this preprocessor over the other available?
Yes, SAS preprocessor is the most preprocessor that we use today for CSS. I think it's something like 75% of all used preprocessor that we are using this day in projects. And of course, this is the reason. And why it's the reason? Maybe the other preprocessors are better, maybe, but maybe not. Because most of the world is using it, it's meaning that it's getting a lot better developed in the future. And if there is another preprocessor that less use, there is more chances that it won't. Maybe they stop develop it, and it's more than that. Because I'm writing a lot of articles, and when I'm writing a lot of articles, and if I'm using, and I used before the less preprocessor, I will write the articles that is using the less preprocessor, a lot less people will read them, and it's very important to touch as many people as you can and inspire them. And if I will use less, I will maybe a lot of chances that my articles won't be read. And this is the reason why I'm using the SAS preprocessor. For the HTML preprocessor, this is my really first time. And most of the web developers, I don't think they know that this Pug HTML preprocessor exists. And in real life, I'm not using it. It's really good for creating pure CSS game, to use it on CodePen. In real life, you're doing all the rotation with JavaScript, Angular, React. It isn't really a good case to use it in real life. I really prefer to write regular HTML with other loops that isn't Pug HTML preprocessor.
So you wouldn't recommend Pug?
I will recommend it if you want to create pure CSS game in the CodePen or something without JavaScript in CodePen. Mostly for CodePen, I think it's good. I don't see a good use case in real life, in real project, but maybe I'm mistaken. It's really my only first time that I use the Pug HTML preprocessor.
Okay, we have another question here from Guy. Any limitation of CSS as a game engine I should consider?
What
Guy
the
asking
question?
that. A guy is an organizer of the Global Game Jam Hackathon, the yearly hackathon, and he's asking if there is any limitation of CSS as a game engine he should consider for his next game.
I will, this. Sometimes I don't understand it because I'm creating the pure CSS game for fun, really for fun. And yes, I don't think that this is the best way to develop games in the real world. No, it's pure CSS game. It's made only for fun and to show possibility in CSS and some trick in CSS, but it isn't a really good case to use it in real life. I'm using in the main navigation label for button. In real life, you don't want to do it. You want to use buttons. You want the semantic that it will be correct. But this is how to create some CSS tricks. As for pure CSS games, to show some tricks, it's good. But use it in real life? No, don't use it.
Well, I hope it answers Guy's question. We have another question from Evgeny. How to create a project with Pug?
How to create a project with Pug? I really don't know. I'm using it only on CodePen. Let me show you it in CodePen. In CodePen, here you can. Where is the here in the settings? You can put here HTML preprocessor, and you can check here the Pug. There is more preprocessor like Slim, Markdown, Hamel, and here I'm just putting the Pug. And of course, you need to learn it and to see some like Pug examples, HTML. Let's see, cheat sheet. Pug cheat sheet, and you can see example of Pug in other websites. I used really this one when I was trying to create some stuff, and you can see you have mixing and you have maybe more stuff, but you can search in Google how to create loop. I don't see here the loops, but really to search in on Google, it's just to take the things that you need. You don't need to learn everything. I didn't use the mixing in my project, but I saw other projects that use it. Use whatever you need. I didn't learn it entirely. I only learned the specific thing that I needed to create this specific project. And it really isn't important for me to understand all the thing in Pug, because maybe the next time that I will use it, it will be maybe in 2-4 years, or maybe in another 1 month, but I really don't need it more than to create this game. I don't see when I will use it again, but I don't know.
Okay, so if no one else has a question, I have last one from me. Is what is your workflow for learning a new thing, like a new technology or a new paradigm?
What is the I'm doing only CSS and HTML. Everything that is new, I'm reading an article, creating a CodePen that I will distend everything in this small example. I'm taking every small thing in it that came new to CSS and started to dig it until I will understanding everything. I'm using some borders and everything to understand how it moves, how it acts. I'm trying to create everything from everything in this very small example. This way I can understand everything. And yes, a lot of time I prefer to write an articles on something that I'm learning. This way it sits more better in my head, and maybe to write an article and to create a talk is the best way to learn. And I think one of the most successful articles that I wrote, CSS logical properties, the article was when I was learning CSS logical properties. I learned it and I started to write it for myself, examples I'm doing and playing, and this way I learned it a lot better. A lot of people, create them a basic understanding of how to start understanding logical properties. And of course, I created from it another talk that it's called the new CSS logical properties. You can find it in YouTube if you like.
Thank you. We have some more questions from the crowd. So first one is Adir asking, using pure HTML and CSS will make my website portfolio faster and better performance?
No, it doesn't matter because preprocessor are rendered only one time. When you're using Sass preprocessor, you create a Sass that is compiled to CSS. But when it's compiled to CSS, only when you created changes. It means that when I'm changing the Sass, it's compiled one time to CSS, and this CSS the website is reading. Website doesn't read Sass code. It's only reading CSS code, and it's only compiled one time, not a million times on every refresh. And of course, the same is for the Pug preprocessor. It's need to render only if you change something, but in the end, it's the same CSS and the same HTML. Because of that, it doesn't matter if you're using Sass or Pug, but in the performance.
Okay, thank you. Itzik is asking, is there any inaccuracy in CSS because of the browser, like the timer?
I need to tell me again the question.
I think what he means is if there is any inaccuracy in the timers you used in CSS because of how the browser is working.
How it's working very good countdown, you mean?
Yeah.
How this countdown. Okay, this is a very important trick when you create the countdown. Where it's written, there is the step end function here. If it will be linear or anything else, it won't work. This way, step end is working. Every change is working in step. It's meaning that how it called animation. 1 second. Animation timeline function is step end, and this is again something from the trick that it will work correctly. Without it, it won't work correctly. You have to have the step end value here. And I forgot to tell you that this thing working in all the browser except for the Safari browser. And in the game, if you will see me playing, I have 2 countdown. One, this one that work in all the browser except Safari browser, and the second one is here, that is going between 0% to 100% in 100 seconds, and this is working for all the browsers. This way, if this doesn't work, you can still look at this countdown.
Cool. So thank you, Elad, and thank you for joining us once again at the Negev Web Developers Meetup. And I hope to see you again in the future once again. Next time, I hope it will be in person. And
I hope to.
Yeah, and have a good evening, and thank you so much.
Thank you for listening.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.